to hear. And so that's his first question. He starts off like that. Please tell me transcendental knowledge, which specifically directs one to the truth of the individual soul and the super soul. But then, as typical for Srimad Bhagavatam, when people tend to ask a question, they're very enthusiastic. And he asked more than one question before Lord Brahma can answer. So text 2 is going to get into his second question. And so one of the things about Srimad Bhagavatam that's explained in the first chapter of the first canto is that you have to have a qualified speaker and a qualified listener. So Lord Brahma, being a pure devotee of the Lord, also the head of our Sampradaya, he is a qualified speaker. And Narada Muni, being very enthusiastic to hear and to learn, he is a qualified listener. All right, so was that a good summary, or is there any questions? Okay. All right.
Superb. That was superb. Thank you.
Of course, of course. All right, so I'll get into text 2 then. I'll chant the Sanskrit, and you guys can read along if you like. Yad rupam yaradishtanam yata shristamidam prabho yat samstyam yat param yatshya tat tatvam vara tatpataha. So Narda's second question here. My dear father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? So this is purport by Srila Prabhupada. The inquiries of Narada Muni on the basis of factual cause and effects appear very reasonable. The atheist, however, put forward many self-made theories without any touch of cause and effect. The manifested world, as well as the spirit soul, is still unexplained by the godless atheist through the medium of experimental knowledge, although they have put forward many theories manufactured by their fertile brains. Contrary to such mental speculative theories of creation, however, Narada Muni wanted to know all the facts of creation in truth, and not by theories. Transcendental knowledge regarding the soul and the supersoul includes knowledge of the phenomenal world and the basis of its creation. In the phenomenal world, three things are factually observed by any intelligent man: the living beings, the manifest world, and the ultimate control over them. The intelligent man can see that neither the living entity nor the phenomenal world are creations of chance. This symmetry of creation and its regulative actions and reactions suggest the plan of an intelligent brain behind them. And by genuine inquiry, one may find out the ultimate cause with the help of one who knows them factually. So, I'll read the verse again. My dear father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? So, one of the things that sticks out to me in this purport is that Narada Muni wants to know factually how things are done and not just by theory. So I had a friend that was studying physics when I was in the university, and he was getting his PhD, and it took him a long time. It took him a long time to finish, and he was always busy for many hours of the day studying, writing. I mean, this guy didn't have any free time. He would literally wake up in the morning, chant his rounds, and do his devotional service and then be studying. And I asked him, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing to get your PhD in physics? And he said, I have to do my thesis on the Big Bang Theory. And I said, like, you have to? And he's like, yeah, it's required that I have to, like, do some thesis on this. And so after about, I don't want to say maybe 2 or 3 years, he finished. And I asked him, so did you prove the Big Bang Theory? And he might put it for boo. That was his name. Did you prove the Big Bang Theory? And he said, if you want to know honestly, it cannot be proven. And really, so I said, you spent 3 years, you know, studying this, and supposedly you're supposed to be proving it, but then you say it cannot be proven. And then also, I think I told the story. Well, I told it to Yamuna and I told it to Abby, but Amy doesn't know. So I'll tell it again for her. When I was in the university and I was studying linguistics, I remember for 2 straight classes, I was writing a theory about how humans learn language. So they have different schools of thought. It's divided into 2 now. Some people think we have this universal blueprint that helps us learn our first language in our head, and that's how we can speak it so well. And then the other theory is that we learn it from the environment, from patterns and things like this. And then other than that, there's all these other theories. So I remember for 2 classes I was writing these various theories about the great fathers of linguistics and whatnot. And my professor at the end of the second class, he says, a lot of these theories that you guys have written have been disproven, and the theories that you're going to write tomorrow, in a few years, they'll also be disproven. And I thought, like I'm spending all this time for theories, but yet somehow some of these people accept them as fact, but nobody really knows for sure. And so in the introduction to the Sheesh Upanishad, it talks about the different ways of receiving knowledge. One of them is through our senses, what we see and what we can observe. And then another way is by descending process, coming down. So, of course, we can acquire some knowledge by, things that we can see. Right now, I'm outside and it's cold, so because I can feel it, I can tell that it's cold. My senses are telling me. I can look around and I can see that there's trees and birds, and I can tell you what colors they are and all these things like this. However, there's a problem with that. As soon as the sun goes down, I can't see anything. Or I'm moving my hand right now. I think I'm moving it, but really what is happening is I'm having the desire to move my hands, and therefore the modes of nature are lining up, neurons are firing in my brain, and I'm moving like this. So we can see in this way that knowledge acquiring by our senses is imperfect, because I can have a stroke, or the lights go out, things like this. It's limited. So therefore, the way of receiving transcendental knowledge, the traditional system, is to receive it from coming down, going through a source, having this knowledge passed down from teacher to teacher to teacher. And if it's ever broken, Krishna says that he appears and he reestablishes the chain. So if you want to know something, you have to go to somebody who knows. So Narada, being very intelligent here, he's going to Brahmaji. Hello. To ask him about the creation.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Cold out here.
Yes, it is. Sorry. He's asking him about the creation, because Brahma learned it directly from Krishna. So from Krishna goes to Brahma, and then Brahma therefore is passing it down to Narada. So therefore, this is the way in which knowledge is passed down. And this keeps it perfect because Prabhupada explains that we pass it just like a mailman delivers mail. You know, the mailman is not opening the letter. The mailman's not changing what's written there. He's just saying, here, this is for you. I'm using this mail analogy because I'm waiting on mail right now. If you know. So they pass it down. So this is what a bona fide teacher does. Passes down this transcendental knowledge exactly as it is, unchanged, from teacher to disciple, but passes it down in such a way also to bring this down to a little bit more practical level. Passes it down in such a way that the student can understand. And so this is expert teacher. It's not just like, oh, okay, I'm giving knowledge because this is what Bhagavatam says, but we see that, you know, now the spiritual master will pass down this knowledge in the way that the disciple can understand. So we see here that Prabhupada, whenever he writes his purports, he'll use like simple analogies, things that we can understand, things that we can relate to. And this is why Srila Prabhupada, he would spend so many hours trying to think of how to put this knowledge from Sanskrit to English. And Prabhupada would wake up around 1 a.m. to translate. And one time his disciple came in at the time that it was time for Prabhupada to finish his translation. And he said, so Prabhupada, were you able to, you know, get a lot of translating done or something like this? And the disciple said, Prabhupada looked at him and said, I spent all night on 2 words. Because he was going from Sanskrit to English, but also he had to be able to explain it in a way that people in the Western world would be able to understand this, that had no knowledge of this outside of India. Which is why you see things like in the Shikshashtakam, when it says, oh my Lord, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Well, in the direct translation, it literally means yuga. But in the Western world, people don't have any idea of what is yuga. So Prabhupada put this so people will get the idea of a very, very long time. You understand? So this is what kind of like what Brahma is going to do to Narada. Explain to him the process of creation, how things are working, how things have been manifested, and also transcendental knowledge. And we're going to see that Prabhupada is going to use examples that we can understand. And yeah, that's the introduction for this chapter. Are there any comments or questions? I could go on, but I want to give you guys time to speak, time to reflect as well, so I don't talk the whole entire time.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Abby.
That was, yeah, I prepared a little bit. I wrote down
Alright.
some things. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for leading the class and everything. Just talking about like the ascending theory of acquiring knowledge.
Yes.
No, ascending method versus the descending method of acquiring knowledge. One example I've read is like with the ascending theory of acquiring knowledge. It's like if you want to know who your father is and you go and you DNA test every single man, like one at a time. Yeah, I mean, eventually, you might. Eventually, I don't know. Like you might get there, but with the descending method of acquiring knowledge to find out who your father is, you go to an authoritative source. So, if you want to know who your father is, you ask you ask your mother. You know, and so yeah, I just wanted to mention that. Also, I've heard Brahma referred to as like the interior decorator as this world of the world, like yeah. And so I like that. And I guess like one thing people have a lot of trouble with is how to recognize something as an authoritative source. You know, like people don't recognize people think, oh, the Bhagavad Gita or the Bhagavatam, it's just some Indian book. You know who it's just some Indian book. So I guess for me, it's hard. How do you prove that it is an authoritative source, And one thing that someone has said to me is, well, it has a lot of scientific things in it, like talking about like the birth process of the embryo growing, or I'm sorry, I'm not able to articulate, but it does have some scientific knowledge in the book for people that are interested in that. Anyway, I guess that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Yeah. Yes. First of all, your comment. I'll comment on your comment, and then I'll try to answer your question. So your comment, that's also a very simple analogy that Prabhupada uses, because he describes one of the definitions of Veda is mother, and this is all written in the introduction of Shri Upanishad. And so, yeah, he would say one of the ways that we know that the Vedas is authoritative, Veda means mother. So if you want to know who your father is, you go and you naturally ask your mother. So if you want to know transcendental topics, therefore you then go to the Vedas. But your thing is, how do we really know that what the Vedas are, what's written in the Vedas is true? And if you look at Bhagavatam, you'll see also various verses where a devotee is making a point, and then they'll say, even great sages such as Narada, such as Vyas, such as Brahma, such as proclaim this. So therefore, when they're making a point, they're not saying that this is my opinion, but they're backing it up with also what the other great sages themselves are saying. And so Krishna also, and if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself, it means song of God. He says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. I am the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Everything emanates from them. Everything emanates from me. Sorry. So where else do you find? Where else do you find in other scriptures where Krishna himself is coming down, God himself is coming down and making this statement? But also, people could say, well, how do we know that that's true? And then I can go to the third thing. You look at the instructions, practice them, and see what happens in your life, right? And practice them sincerely. Why are we all here? Because somebody told us about the chanting of Hare Krishna, right? And we took it up and we decided to make an experiment. It's like the scientific method. You guys know the scientific method, right? I know Amy probably does because she's a teacher. So the scientific method, oh God, I can't remember all steps because it's been a long time.
It's 8 steps. The first one is the observation.
Yeah, observation and hypotenuse and such and such and such.
Yeah.
And I can't think of all the steps right now. But basically what we're doing, what you can do is the same thing. You're observing. Somebody came to me one day and said, chant this mantra every day. It will change your life. Did I necessarily believe that right off the bat? No. But I thought, let me try it. Let me see what happens. All right? And therefore, then I started chanting Hare Krishna. And some result came. My anxiety decreased. And I was chanting I actually was chanting very non-distracted. I really wanted to go full into it because I was I want to know if this works because I'm seeing these people chant it every time I go get my lunch, right? And so I would sit down every day, just chant 1 or 2 mantras first thing in the morning. First thing I noticed, anxiety decreased. Next thing I noticed, more awareness. Seeing everybody as spirit soul. not identifying with the body, respecting all creatures, things like this. There was this internal transformation. Then I had less desire to eat meat. You know, so naturally it started actually transforming me from within. And so when you find something bona fide, it should give you some results also, not just that, oh, I have faith that this is true. And of course, with some things in the Vedas, we can't experience them because it's on a level that we ourselves aren't able to experience because of our limited senses and this limited body. So we're not able to see that. Just like there are different animals that can see things because they have different vision than we do. But with that said, there should be some things that we can experience, some transformation that's happening. That's the whole point of having a bona fide spiritual process, is that it should, Prabhupada said, it should bring you connection with God. It should reestablish that relationship with God. It should give you love of God. So when we follow this process, do you find yourself wanting to know and love God, feeling closer to God, feeling respect for all of his living entities? Are you starting to experience the symptoms of a devotee as described in Nectar of Devotion? And one of those symptoms is it gives relief from distresses. That's the first one. And then also it goes on up into, you get realization of God and all this. But and I can't remember those off the top of my head, but I can look them up for you later. It's in Nectar of Devotion. I know it's there, the symptoms. So, but anyway, in short, that's another way I can say that we can tell that they're bona fide. You're having an actual experience that the Shastra says you're going to have. It's backed up by other sources. And yeah, so does anyone else have anything they'd like to add? Because some of you might have something that I've forgotten.
Hare Krishna. Well, I'll add a few words about this verse because it's like we are part. Our discussion today is a part of a process that began thousands of years ago. Began from the very first son of the very first man, or the creator of mankind, asking the very most basic questions. Here it's not a question, it's a series of questions. What is this all about? How did it start? Where did it created? And in reality, um, we have touched upon the concept that the answers to these very basic questions are maybe inconceivable by us. So at the beginning, in any case, we must approach this with a little bit of faith.
Yes.
Because I know that there's the emphasis that this is scientific in some way. This is scientific, but if you go back to the very, very first question that anybody has about religion at all, is that if God is always been here or here, but who created God even? So we get back, into something that's so inconceivable for us, that the only choice we have is to begin by accepting what the beginning, what the Lord said, and how how this went from the creator of the human species and the first son asking, and all of this being put down for us to be talking about it, for others scholars to be talking about it for years and years and years, and for generations and generations, from master to disciple, master to disciple, master to disciple, master to disciple, and here we are to throw it all around all over again too. Let's discuss this all over again. Let's try to understand this. So as as I pointed out, or as we have to start with a little bit of faith, that because of the sources that we are getting this from, that there must be truth there, you know.
Yeah.
Once we begin with that premise, we can go on as you have said, Mother Lavanga, you know, in you know, trying to to understand this, and by asking questions, and you know, am I losing my focus here? So do you understand the point
Yeah,
that I'm
no, no.
making? Yeah.
You're reminding me of something that this is why I love to do this stuff in groups, because it's hard to remember everything like right off the top of your head at once. And then somebody comes and they say something and it helps you know, because Krishna is in the heart of everyone. So
Oh, yes,
anyway,
yes, yes. But now I remember, because you talked about the practical way of like
mm,
experimenting it, trying what is said and seeing that it made changes in your life. And that's why, how you can, you know, further prove
right.
its validity, you know,
Yes,
which
yeah,
is what you pointed out. So that was what I was trying to get to. That first we have to start with a certain premise, and then let's see. And I do want to mention something that maybe I've mentioned in the past, and I'm sorry if I sometimes get into what it is that I think about these things. But in reality, if we're trying to get something out of the teachings, it in the long run, or it doesn't even matter if these things are factual or not, because these things are here for us to learn from. And we start with the premise, okay, we want to accept this, and we're going to practice it in our lives and see what. But remember, whether or not things happened exactly as it says here, the lessons are universal and transcendental and so important, and that's why we sit here centuries later discussing these same words over and over and over again.
yeah.
Okay.
And along with your point about how there has to be some primitive faith, Prabhupada does say in the very beginning that when you're reading Bhagavad Gita, you have to first theoretically accept that Krishna is God. You know, at least have some faith that this might be true. So it does actually, you know, start with a little bit of faith, and then from that faith, then we practice, right? Practice, you get some results, and then therefore that increases your faith. But yes, as you say, faith also has to be there. But the beautiful thing about Krishna consciousness is that you get both. It's not just believe this and you find out later, but you believe, you practice, and you get more and more realization. Krishna reveals himself. And also, too, if you pay attention, you can see this in everyday life. I was just telling Amy, you know, I sent a message to Amy today that you know, my grandmother, she's in the hospital, long story short. But you know, all of my life, my grandmother was like the matriarch of the family, the one taking care of everybody, the one managing all the money. You know, it's like she's career woman, but she's also like, you know, good mother, like good mother. You know, she did it all. She was one of those ladies that did it all. You know, and and I guess you could say like the job of like a working woman and a stay-at-home mom. So anyway, you know, she was in charge of managing all the household budget. She made all the decisions, you know, things like this. And now that she's in a situation where she's in the hospital, and you know, she's towards the end of her life, although, you know, I really hope that, you know, she will stay with us for many more years. I'm seeing that in her situation, she's worried about money, and she's thinking, you know, thinking people are trying to steal her money, you know, worried about her bank accounts, asking my mom for her phone so she can check her checking account and see how money's going out. And she's kind of delirious right now. She's losing it in her mind a little bit. But what's coming to her is what's going on with her money, what's going on with her properties, things like this. And I remember, all throughout my life, she took care of us very well, but she was always very meticulous about the money, how much money was going out, where it was being spent. If you could buy something cheaper at another store, she'd get mad at you for buying it at the wrong store, like that type of thing. And I'm bringing this up because we do know that Bhagavad Gita will talk about, the greatest attachment at the end of our life, you know, it will come out. We'll think of it. And I'm seeing it, play out in real time. That, oh wow, she was, really into like managing the money and, economic security. And she did quite well. I mean, the house I'm in right now, she remodeled it. She bought it, you know, very cheap for $100,000. It was run down and she remodeled it with my grandfather with her own hands. And, so but now she's thinking about these things, money, properties, what's happening, is somebody stealing it from me, somebody taking it, what's going to happen, all these types of things. And I was like, wow, it really is true what Bhagavad Gita says, that when we're in this situation kind of at the end of our life, that these attachments start to come out. Sometimes like in her delirium, we'll go up there and she won't remember, who we are, but she will ask, what is this charge in her checking account? Something like that. So the point I'm trying to make with all this is that if we're paying attention, you know, from this theoretical knowledge that we're getting in the books, we can also get realized knowledge. And we can really see that the way things are working in this world is exactly like Srimad Bhagavatam says, is exactly like Bhagavad Gita says. And also, Bhagavad Gita, one of the things it talks about is that, without Krishna consciousness, there is no peace. And, even before my grandmother went into the hospital, I could see that there's just like a lot of anxiety in the house, the different health issues, you know, trying to manage this and trying to manage that, and, a whole lot of anxiety and a whole lot of worry. And, before she went to the hospital, she's trying to remodel her condo. So she's worried about how that all that's going to happen. And I was like, and then, she's getting to the point where, like she can't move, she's not mobile. And some days she would just cry and say, I don't have a purpose anymore. You know, my life is, I just want to go, because all of her life, she was focused on her career and focused on these things. And so, now, kind of at the end where the body is breaking down, she feels like, oh, like I don't have a purpose in life anymore. And, she gets in those types of moods. And then it made me realize that, oh yeah, if you don't have a relationship with God, like a deep relationship, a really, really deep relationship, not just like a saying I'm a Christian or I'm this or I'm that, but if you don't develop that really, really deep relationship, later when you can't do all the material things that you could do before, you're going to be frustrated. But yet I see certain devotees, I mean, there's different levels of devotees, but I've seen devotees that have really took the time to see Krishna everywhere and really spent their lives cultivating that attachment. And, they've got the most painful cancer and they're happy and they're like, they're pulling through it. I mean, not to say that they don't feel pain or, there's not things like that, but they're much more peaceful. And then that's when I realized, oh, Krishna's showing me the reality of how things are. That really, 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 if you're not working to reestablish that relationship, then later, then you're going to be in anxiety when you can't do all these things that you could do before. So does this make sense to you guys? Do you know how we get realized knowledge? But here's the thing. One has to be conscious. And one has to actually try to see this philosophy and everything. And then when you're like that, then you're like, okay, I get it. Because Krishna's trying to show us all the time. but sometimes there's many lessons I miss because I'm not paying attention or I'm not conscious. But yeah, there's faith there, but then from that faith, if we're conscious, we can also get realized knowledge. So I mean, I think this was kind of like a long answer to your question, but I don't know if this helps.
I really liked that the focus was initially was like just on the chanting. It's all like the kirtan prasadam chanting, and then you get the results from the chanting, and then you can become interested in everything else because the chanting is where you get the immediate results. So I really like that, like totally answered it. I felt.
Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't like I just that answer didn't like come to mind before. I was like, maybe I should like ask Chat GPT about all the Chat GPT about like I'm Chat GPT everything. I'm Chat GPT all the time. So I was gonna ask Chat like, I don't know, about like the scientific stuff and the Bhagavatam. Hopefully I still will do that. But yeah, just chant. Just chant, you get the results, and then you can become interested. So that like was like totally a great answer. And anyway, thank you.
Of course, of course. Let's see, what time is it now? Okay, 5:43 for me. Okay. So are there any other more thoughts on this verse or anything we've discussed? All right. Well, Yamuna, should we go to the next one or?
Well, I guess we could if there's nothing left to be said there.
All right.
But, all right.
Let me check the next verse here. 6. Okay, 3.
I can read that.
All right, you go ahead.
Sarvam hai etat bhavan vera bhutta bhava bhavat prabhu karamalak va vishvam vijnana vajitam tava. My dear Father, all this is known to you scientifically because whatever was created in the past, whatever will be created in the future, or whatever is being created at present, as well as everything within the universe, is within your grip, just like a walnut. And the purport. Brahma is the direct creator of the manifested universe and everything within the universe. He therefore knows what happened in the past, what will happen in the future, and what is happening at present. 3 principal items, namely the living being, the phenomenal world, and the controller, are all in continuous action, past, present, and future, and the direct manager is supposed to know everything of such actions and reactions as one knows about a walnut within the grip of one's palm. The direct manufacturer of a particular thing is supposed to know how he learned the art of manufacturing, where he got the ingredients, how he set it up, and how the products in the manufacturing process are being turned out. Because Brahma is the firstborn living being, naturally he is supposed to know everything about creative functions. All right, going back quickly to the translation. My dear Father, all this is known to you scientifically because whatever was created in the past, whatever will be created in the future, or whatever is being created at present, as well as everything within the universe, is within your grip, just like a walnut. I think this is wonderful because this idea of seeing at the same time the past, the present, and the future, there's some scientific idea that these things might just all be in existence simultaneously. So for Brahma to understand it all, maybe it is. And that brings us to the old question: is everything happening as it should, or how do we influence, by our desires or our decisions that we make, the way things go. But here it says very clearly that it's all known scientifically. Okay, which brings us back to, well, what is known scientifically? Exactly how the world began, and the saying that scientifically we know it, it's based on the words in this book to us. I mean, what more do we know than the words of our teachers? Getting back to we have to believe in the bona fide source. So Brahma knew everything. He's the direct creator, but he knows what happened in the past, what will happen in the future, what is happening in the present, which, as I just pointed out, it's kind of as if everything is simultaneous. And so that's what I want to say. I look forward to what you may add to that.
All right. Well, also, yes, Brahma knowing past, present, and future, how this is all arranged, how it is maintained, and ultimately how it will be destroyed. Narnamuni says this is all within your grip. So what we can understand by this is that Brahma knows his stuff. It's not that he only knows a little bit of it, or he has some idea of it. I think, like I mentioned in the previous verse, like it was mentioning, it's not theories. But at the same time, with this said, is that Brahma has complete knowledge of how this material manifestation is going on. One time Prabhupada was meeting with these theologians. Theology is the study of God. So he said to them very simply, and it's a video. God, I had to go find it on YouTube. You guys might want to see it if you haven't seen it already. And it's a clip where he's sitting in this courtyard in Los Angeles. And so he said, so you're studying theology, so what is God? And then he said, well, the one guy was like, oh, we have different nights. And Brahma said, but you're studying theology, but you cannot tell me what is God? Like, making a point like that. I think I'm paraphrasing what Prabhupada said, but I remember that was kind of like the main point that Prabhupada was making. Something just like so simple. You're claiming that you teach this subject, but really, do you know everything about that subject? And so Narada here, he's making this point about Brahma, and Prabhupada makes a very simple point in this purport. The direct manufacturer of a particular thing is supposed to know how he learned the art of manufacturing, where he got the ingredients, how he set it up, how the products in the manufacturing process are being turned out, because Brahma is the firstborn living being. Naturally, he is supposed to know everything about creative functions. So, when you go to a doctor and maybe you have something wrong with you, and then they have to send you to another doctor. They have knowledge about health, but they don't know everything about the body. It's like, you have a cardiologist for your heart issue. You have not a neurosurgeon, or maybe, is that called a neurosurgeon for the brain? And all sorts of things. So, you go to a doctor for the health, and your general, like here in the US, they do general practitioners, and the Dominican Republic, it's like so easy to go see a specialist. But here it's like you have to go see a general practitioner first. And the general practitioner, he has a general idea of health issue, of like the body. But for specialized things, you have to go see a specialist. So with Brahma here, he knows exactly the ingredients, how it's being set up, how it's being maintained. There's nothing about this creative manifestation that's not known to him. So he is the expert. So in the in the same way, you know, the spiritual master, when we're inquiring about spiritual life, they know, you know, the one that's directly in contact with Krishna, you know, they know all the words of Krishna, all the importance, and everything is revealed to them. And it says, for one who has implicit faith in the spiritual master and their instructions, all the purports of the Vedas are actually revealed to them. So therefore, that's why when we want to know something, you have to actually go to a real expert. And this is why, you know, people who study very intensely Srila Prabhupada's words, and you see that they're hearing his lectures and they have intense faith in these things. They're very sharp. You know, they can, you know, they figure, you know, they're able to answer, you're able to answer your questions. Things are revealed to them like that. So yeah, Narda's showing us with his example that if you want to know something, you have to approach an expert. You know, I had a guitar teacher, you know, because I was learning guitar once, and he knew how to teach me all the notes and scales and things like this. I was doing classical guitar, but he also knew how to build one. Yeah, so he had, you know, complete knowledge in that sense. So this is the point in the nutshell that Narada Muni is making. Nobody knows this better than you, maybe except for Krishna himself, because that's the other level, you know, only Krishna is. But therefore, he's approaching him. I want to know about the creative manifestation. I want to know about transcendental knowledge. All this is known to you. So it's not like, oh, you know, I'm approaching someone who doesn't really know, who only knows halfway. He's approaching one who actually knows it, the direct source. So with that said, I think we have about 5 minutes left. Amy, was there something you want to add to any of this?
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Thank you so much for both of you, your dissertation, your class on Srimad Bhagavatam, and it called my attention to the point where in the purport His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada is mentioning the three principal items, namely the living being, the phenomenal world, and the controller, are all in continuous action, past, present, and future. So it's kind of like calling to my attention the word in continuous action, which means that past, present, and future are happening at the same time.
Right.
And I think that's called Trikalagya, if I'm not mistaken, that has the complete vision of the past, present, and future in Sanskrit. And
That's what I was saying too. Yes.
yes. And so I was just amazed by the fact that it's actually an illusion that we have about time. And it raises the question of whether are we really living in the present moment, or are these experiences consequences of our, since we know that we're living the consequences of our actions, is it really present moment, or is it kind of like memories of the past that we're kind of living or something? Is what is kind of like raised that I
Yeah,
guess
are we really in the present? Since it's
are we
all
really
going
in the
on, since
yes,
it's all going
like
on simultaneously.
has this already happened before, or are we just living kind of like from our memory?
No, I mean, from what I can understand about time, and there are devotees that can explain this subject matter much better than me. So, I'm not like Brahma, where I have complete knowledge of all the Vedas. I'm still learning myself. But what I've understood about time is that, you know, we are time in this material manifestation. We are here, you know, in the present moment. And but this time element, even though past, present, and future is all going on simultaneously, it only exists within the material realm. And it only exists when one is, confined here, when one is in this material body. It doesn't act on the soul. So from my understanding is that yes, we are in the present now. We're experiencing reactions from the past. And then later, in the future, and then our actions now determine how we live out the future. But at the same time, with all that said, past, present, and future is going on simultaneously.
I was going to add to that the fact that this is also the reason why we can't really completely understand God, because if only Brahma, right, is the creator, and he has this vision of complete vision, and we're limited living entities that are limited by our senses, which are not perfect and are also contaminated. So then we're not able to actually, we have to purify ourselves. And even if we purify ourselves, we're not going to get to that point to really understand God, because God is infinite. So our limited finite senses are not going to be able to understand. We would have to have some special vision, like when Arjuna asks Krishna, please show me your universal form, which is when everything is happening at the same time, which is really kind of scary.
Yeah. And then Krishna says, yes, but you don't have the eyes to see it, so let me give you divine eyes. And so therefore, by the mercy of Krishna, Arjuna was able to see all this going on simultaneously. So that's another thing, is that we have to have the divine vision, which in the practice of Krishna consciousness, you'll notice that there's moments where Krishna pulls the curtain back and you get a realization and you're just like, I get it. It's hit me. Or you're with your spiritual master or one of your gurus, and you're sitting and you're talking, and all of a sudden a curtain gets pulled back for you, and it's like, wow. Like, I've heard this, but now I'm getting this, or I'm having a whole deeper level of realization than what is going on. And this is the amazing beauty of Krishna consciousness, is that in one sense, Krishna can never be fully understood. But that's the beauty, is that means it's always fresh, it's always new, and there's always a deeper layer to uncover. Just like what we're reading here about past, present, and future going on simultaneously. I've read through Srimad Bhagavatam 3 times. And I had forgotten about that. Like, that we're having this discussion on that particular topic. That's never happened. And I'm like, oh, all going on simultaneously. And this is why the Shastra is ecstasy, and having these discussions amongst devotees. This is how we make advancement. Sitting here talking, because we uncover more and more layers than what we would have done on our own.
Now that you mentioned the Shastras, I was also wondering about the Shraddha, right? Faith.
Faith, yeah.
Yeah, and that there are two different types of faith, if I'm not mistaken, that I read. I can't remember where right now because I've been reading too much lately. But one is like Shastric faith, and the other is like normal faith, like the one you get, I don't know, naturally. But the Shastric faith is kind of like a more elevated type of faith, right? Which kind of like strengthens your own faith, but like the natural one, or it has a term in Sanskrit, but I really don't remember. I must maybe make notes of that. But I remember
Yeah,
the Shastric faith and how that one strengthens the other one, or I don't know, it kind of like consolidates your faith and it becomes conviction or something.
yes, yeah,
And that's the beauty of the Shastras, really.
yeah, is that it gives one that conviction. But I remember what you're talking about because that's also in a Bhagavatam purport, and I'm gonna go look that up. But yeah, that's absolutely right. The Shastric faith is more elevated, and through the Shastric faith, one develops firm conviction because the Shastric knowledge is perfected. It's without any sort of material contamination.
I like the word irrefutable. Like it's
It-
kind of like exactly. So if you base your faith on Shastra is something that it follows the scientific method. It's something that you
yeah,
can observe, test, and verify. And and then it becomes irrefutable because it's in the Shastras and you have quotes. And I mean that's the beauty of it, I guess.
exactly. Yeah, like yeah, it goes back to the scientific method. That's in the Shastra, and then from that you get some result, and then from that you get conviction. So anyway, it is we're over time now, but this was so nice. Thank you guys. This was
This
really
was a
nice.
very good discussion. I'm glad there so many of you are participating, and I hope that you all come back next week. I hope.
Yes.
And I know you came out and you thanked me and you thanked Mother Lavanga, but don't forget to thank Bhaktina Abby also because it was she who insisted that these classes should go on and let's just find the time to do it. So here we are doing it. So
All glories to Abby. Yeah.
All glories to Abby, and I'm
Yes.
very grateful for all of you for your service and for this wonderful discussion that has been so enriching. Thank you so much.
Yes, and
Thank you
I look forward
guys.
to meeting Madhuri in some moment as well. I
All
hope
right.
she is enjoying the discussion.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I was just listening to the discussion. I joined a little late, but yeah, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and it's
Yes.
just that
Oh,
we are
great.
getting this knowledge. Yeah. Hare
Well, come
Krishna.
next week, and maybe you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
be a more active participant next
Sure,
week.
Yeah.
sure.
And remember, once a month we will have the questions and answers with Manonatha Maharaj, so you can go guarding some questions, sending
Mhm.
them now or later, and then we'll announce a date for the class. Okay?
Okay. Haribol.
Yeah. And
Krishna.
I wanted to apologize to Maduri. Like if you wanted to make a comment, I didn't want you to feel left out. I didn't notice you because your camera was off, and sometimes I don't like to call on people when their camera's off because they're usually doing something.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I actually today was my first class, so I was like, let's listen more. And I've just started Bhagavatam. At least, like, I've just started first canto and few chapters. So yeah, kind of learning and then trying to, get a grasp of the little bit of text. And maybe next time I would definitely prepare myself before coming to the class, and we may have few questions.
All right. Good deal. Good deal. Well, next week we'll start on text 4, I believe it
Okay.
is.
Yes, I'll put it in the chat. Yeah,
The text 4.
will
And
be my turn. Yes,
yeah, Canto 2, Chapter 5, Text 4, Yamuna will be leading next week.
yes.
And is there any announcements that you have, Yamuna, for us?
There's no other
Okay.
announcements really. The only thing that might be of interest to some of you or might not is that we've discontinued the Facebook page Isvara Archive.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
Apparently, not so many people were following it so much, and then
Okay.
all the information is appearing in other places like the chats and the other Facebook page. So we ended up discontinuing it just for your
Okay. All
general
right.
knowledge.
Okay, good. All right. Well, all glories to Prabhupada, and I'll see you guys next week. Hare Krishna.
Okay,
Hare
Hare
that's
Krishna.
Krishna.
all.
Hare
Hare
Ram.
Krishna. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna,
Thank you.
Haribol.
Hare Ram.
Manonatha Maharaj ki
Yeah.
jai.